This is going to be the long version of my story. This will take between 2 and 3 hours. I'll be breaking it down into parts for those of you who watch this to be able to easily watch it in bits and share this entire story with your friends and family and your general community. So for starters, I will tell you my first name. It is Srikanth. The reason why I look like the Indian version of the Unabomber is because I know full well that when this story gets out to the public, my life will never be the same again. So what little anonymity I possess right now, I would like to maintain. I enjoy the fact that nobody knows who I am when I am perhaps staying in a hotel or eating at a restaurant or simply going for a walk. This story, of course, has everything to do with what has been going on in India over the past few years since Prime Minister Modi was elected into office in May of 2014. It also has to do with Andhra Pradesh and the travails, the obstacles that Chandrababu Naidu has had to face since Donald Trump's presidential election win in November of 2016. Of course, in May of 2019, a guy by the name of Jagan Mohan Reddy won the election. Supposedly, it was actually stolen from Chandrababu Naidu with the help of Prime Minister Modi. Since the state of Andhra Pradesh has suffered tremendously. Jagan has been essentially buying votes. He stopped the Polavaram Dam project. He stopped the construction of Amravati, the new capital of Andhra Pradesh. He basically destroyed the state with support of Delhi. That is Prime Minister Modi and the BJP party. Even beyond that, the United States has been getting destroyed, all of it self-inflicted. These individuals who are involved in my matter are all American citizens. They are all born and raised in the United States. They are not even baby boomers. They're actually Gen Xers and millennials. So I will go through a lot of this down the road, but this video is essentially for the citizens of India to understand just how corrupt their political system is, their supposed democracy, and in particular, this BJP party that never had this type of power in India before. I just want to inform Indians in India and elsewhere how quickly Narendra Modi was corrupted by the US with simply one promise that the United States would provide full support to the BJP party going forward. So that means for the next 40 to 50 years, the BJP would be the dominant political party in India at the national level. Other promises were made, such as also making the BJP viable at the state and local level throughout India from north to south, even in a state like Tamil Nadu. So I want Indians to understand precisely how corrupt and, in all sincerity, insane Prime Minister Modi is. The guy does not have any real education in the matters that I will be bringing up in this video, nor does Donald Trump. This story starts in 2010, so I'll begin right there. In April of 2010, I met a guy by the name of Kyle. I was hanging out with one of my friends. We both meet this guy. He's a few years younger than my friend and I are. And he works on Wall Street. He was doing business with a childhood friend of mine by the name of Josh Fink. We sat down, we hung out for about 4.5 hours that evening. We talked about globalism and a wide variety of issues, the two-party democracy that we have in the United States, its divide and conquer methodology in preserving itself, that is, the Democrat and Republican parties. I largely spoke during this conversation between the three of us. I basically explained a lot of things to Kyle that he did not know about. Basically talked about the next 40 years up until 2050, what globalism would be like and how globalization would take place. The reasons why China and India, the two most populated countries in the world, are being brought into the globalist kind of system of global economics and global finance, global trade, and why manufacturing and IT services jobs were being given to China and India, respectively, knowing full well that the American and European millennial generations would be sacrificed in the process. I talked about social issues, liberalism in general. I myself have been a liberal my entire life. However, after 9/11 happened, I started doing research into who was actually behind 9/11. But even beyond that, I studied the financial system. I focused on the history of banking and this current system that we've been using for about 200-300 years or so, originating in London with the Bank of England. I basically studied all sorts of topics, economic issues, political history of the United States. I covered even religions. So this entire process lasted about 2.5 years. So I had gone through a wide variety of matters with Kyle. My friend is listening as well and chiming in as well. And one of the things that I told Kyle was that the recent 2008 financial collapse was actually intentionally caused by a handful of bankers and financial firms on Wall Street. And they had intentionally exacerbated the housing bubble throughout the 2000s and proceeded to pop the bubble, knowing full well that it would bring down not only the American housing market and the economy with it, but also the global economy and the financial system as well. So I had explained to Kyle that actually it was Josh's dad, Larry Fink, who is the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, a financial firm that manages upwards of $10 trillion in assets and has a massive amount of influence on Wall Street and our beloved central bank, the Federal Reserve. The reason why they did this was to create that bust phase of the typical 10-year neoliberal capitalist boom-bust cycle that has been going on for many decades since the inception of the Federal Reserve, but has been weaponized since the introduction of neoliberalism in 1981 by Ronald Reagan in the United States and Margaret Thatcher in the UK. What ended up happening was Kyle, who did business with Josh, told Josh everything that I had said. I believe the very next day they had met with each other for work, and Josh had told Larry, and Larry asked who said this, who said that I intentionally caused the housing bubble to expand and proceed to explode, intentionally bringing down the markets, or not only in the US but around the world. Josh had said that it was Sri. My friends call me Sri in the US. They don't call me Srikanth. Srikanth is too difficult to pronounce. Within a month or two, my MacBook Pro, a laptop that I was using at the time, ended up getting hacked. At the time, I did not pay much attention to it because I had never been hacked before. Where I was living was not a likely place to actually get hacked. I initially believed that it was the FBI. A lot of bad things happened in my own personal life and at work. And this kept on going for the next 2 years or so. One thing that I noticed beginning in the summer of 2010 was that all of the stocks in all of my financial accounts, including retirement accounts that I had not even looked at, but were under my name, started to simultaneously decline. Very, very unusual. I've never seen anything like it. Could not explain any of these things. I had never went through something like this. I guess the best way to explain it is that I was in this kind of streak of bad luck that I could not get myself out of. No matter how much I planned and plotted my moves, my decisions in my own personal life, or perhaps at work, it was just kind of incredible. And so I fell into a very deep depression. I was drinking, pretty much every night because I could not sleep because of the stress. And I ended up quitting work, and I ended up moving into a hotel thinking that I might only be staying there for a month. Let me see what I'm going to do with my life. How am I going to resolve this matter? Because I deeply suspected it originated with Josh. While I'm at the hotel, I'm essentially watching these stocks. I'm also trading them, buying and selling. I'm also shorting stocks just to see what will happen. And as I expected, within 5 minutes, no more than a half hour, if I bought a stock, it would start to decline. It could be a stock like Apple, a very bullish stock at that time, and Apple would begin to decline. I could be shorting a stock, perhaps a commodity stock that was out of favor at the time. After shorting it, within maybe 5 to 10 minutes, that stock would just start to create a base, and then I could check up on that stock maybe a half hour, let's say 2 hours later, and that stock has already gone parabolic. Just mind-blowing stuff that I have never witnessed in my life. And I deeply suspected that, yes, this has to be Larry. Now, BlackRock is an asset manager. They're a long-only firm. They do not short stocks. So I suspected that Larry got some investment banks, perhaps hedge funds involved in the matter, and they simply coordinated to make sure that each and every time I purchased or shorted a stock, that I would continually hemorrhage money. So I know full well what is going on. However, I am essentially powerless. I'm just an ordinary American. I am Indian American as well. So I don't really have the power or anything to kind of stop anything like this at the time. If I were to have gone to a lawyer, he or she would not believe the story. And even if they did, a situation like this is just highly difficult to prove and to tackle. I mean, I don't know where a lawyer would start. Had I gone to a lawyer back in those days, I just don't know where he or she would have begun. So this is essentially what's happening. And while I'm in the hotel, I'm also watching CNBC on television while I'm trading these stocks or purchasing them long term. And I'm also listening to music either on Spotify or Pandora or perhaps on YouTube. And I'm also reading up on the news, independent news, because I'm not an idiot. After 9/11, I had essentially rejected all of American corporate mainstream media. So stuff like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, stuff like that, CBS, ABC, I don't watch any of that. I'm only watching CNBC because of the markets and because of what I'm doing in the hotel room. I'm also depending on sites like Zero Hedge, for financial news and information. And I'm also relying on a new news source that I had only discovered in 2010, approximately the same time that I had gotten hacked, ironically, called RT. So RT is Russia's news network for the rest of the world. I had quickly realized that these guys do not lie, they do not spin, and they were very, very dependable with their information. So no longer working, I've got all the time in the world now in the hotel to kind of read up on the news and see what my wonderful United States government is up to in Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, Libya, bringing freedom and democracy to the Middle East and Africa. And within a month, no more than 2 months, I started noticing that the music that I was listening to on the laptop, whether it be on YouTube or Pandora or Spotify, when CNBC would cut in and out of commercial breaks, they would play some kind of current song at that time. Generally, back in those days, it was like some rap song or some pop dribble. And I don't listen to that music. I listen to 60s, 70s, 80s, and some early 90s music. CNBC would play that very same song when they were entering commercial break, or perhaps when they were coming back on air. And that was just mind-blowing to me. You know, if it happens one time, that's a remarkable coincidence. If it were to happen twice in 6 months, that's mind-blowing. But this was happening every day, 5 days a week, during their live programming from the morning until the early evening. So this would happen maybe 4 or 5 times in a single day, in just one day. Every day, 5 days a week. And so initially I was in a bit of a denial phase, and I finally accepted that not only was I under surveillance by the United States government, but this was not the FBI. This was the CIA. And how did I realize that? Because of Operation Mockingbird. After 9/11, like I said before, I had covered a wide variety of topics, and one of the topics was actually the CIA. I had spent about 2 months on just the CIA alone and its history going back to 1947 and even beyond when it was known as the OSS. It was actually from that I started learning the history of Latin America. It was what encouraged me to give a damn about Latin America and to understand what the United States government had been doing to Latin America going back to the end of World War II. While I'm reading these articles, watching YouTube videos perhaps by RT, occasionally by Al Jazeera, I'm also posting comments. And what I'm doing is I'm sharing these videos or articles on Google+. Google+ does not exist anymore, but I trusted Google more than a company like FaceCrap because FaceCrap is run by this robot. So using Google+, I would post comments and encourage others to vote third party. I myself have been voting third party since 2002, after the 2000 election, where Bush Jr. stole the election essentially with his brother Jeb, who was the governor of Florida. And of course, the following year, how perfect, 9/11 occurs. opening up the door for the Republican Party, which has traditionally been the war party since the end of World War II, to essentially wage war with the Middle East, in particular Afghanistan and Iraq. In the case of Iraq, Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, of course. At the time, anyone who performed any modicum of research would have understood that Saudi Arabia was the country behind it, but even beyond that, Israel and the United States, to be specific, the CIA. So while I'm doing this, I'm posting not only about perhaps the conflicts going on at the time in the Middle East and Africa that the US is waging under the banner of either spreading freedom and democracy or perhaps fighting terrorism. Keep in mind that many of the terrorist groups that exist were either created but certainly armed and funded by the CIA. That is the United States government. The CIA is the world's greatest terrorist organization, or at least that's how I refer to it. Over the past 15 or so years, I would say, late 2000s. But even prior to that, it really is just a state-sponsored paramilitary organization that functions in a clandestine manner in order to assassinate foreign leaders, overthrow governments, either through coup or inciting civil wars, very much like what is going on between Russia and Ukraine right now. I also posted about the two-party system, the two-party democracy as I call it, American corporate fascism, globalism, Zionism, and various economic and political ideologies such as neoconservatism, neoliberalism, just a wide array of topics. The one thing I would not post about was the 2008 financial collapse and how and who was really behind it. And that was largely because I had deeply suspected that Larry wanted me under surveillance because he wanted to find out how did I find out that he played a fundamental role in exacerbating that housing bubble and also creating the devastation that ensued, including the ongoing recession at the time in 2012. So by late 2012, I would say September, October, November, I noticed that CNBC would start covering the topics that I would be posting about. They would also use verbatim, oftentimes, so like phrases or even full sentences from the posts that I had been posting on Google+. For their own programming, for their own material. So this was certainly Operation Mockingbird. By the way, when I mention various names or perhaps terms, please look them up. Please pause the video and do your own research so that you yourself are educated, showing the inclination to educate yourself on matters that are not typically taught in schools, certainly American schools, is a good thing. Independent thought, independent research is extraordinarily healthy and is seriously lacking in the world today. Not only in India, but countries like the United States. So what I realize is I begin to not only influence, but also control Barack Obama's White House policies, in particular foreign policies. One of the things that I had tried to do was to get him out of Iraq, get him out of Afghanistan, to cease clandestine CIA warfare in Syria, to bring peace to Libya, but even places like Somalia and Yemen. We are conducting drone strikes left and right. So a lot of collateral damage, a lot of civilian casualties. So while this is going on between myself and CNBC, other American corporate mainstream media outlets were also brought on board. While this back and forth is going on, every single day, 5 days a week, between myself and CNBC And so I noticed that I started to influence even CNN's programming, HBO's programming through Bill Maher, Comedy Central through Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. In 2014, when Waldo, that is John Oliver, debuts his own program on HBO, from the very first episode of that first season, which is available on Amazon Prime, if you go through that entire season, every single episode I had some sort of influence over. So what happened was essentially all of the corporate mainstream media outlets in the United States that functioned to support and maintain the Democrat Party joined this psyop that was going on between myself and the CIA under Barack Obama's White House administration and State Department too. I suspected that FBI had to have been involved by this point because this is a domestic matter. I am an American citizen on American soil, and I suspected the NSA was involved as well. So this was becoming a big deal by the time that Edward Snowden had come forward with his metadata disclosure by the NSA in May of 2013. I had sat there and thought to myself, my situation is going to blow the lid off of everything. This is really just occurring between myself, the CIA, CNBC, the Barack Obama White House, CNN, Comedy Central, which is owned by Viacom, CBS got involved as well in September 2014. ESPN, which is a sports network, because I do watch sports, got involved as well in the summer of 2014. ESPN is owned by Disney, so Robert Iger knows who I am. All of the executives at these networks know who I am, but so do many of the anchors and reporters. Every single one at CNBC at the time, every single one at CNN at the time, all of the HBO executives, Bill Maher, by, let's say, the summer of 2013. Now, a big thing occurs in November of 2013. I had gone out to a restaurant across the street from the hotel.